The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello there, and welcome to the final session at episode 3 of Join Digital today. And I'm delighted to welcome back Matt Diamond, who is fast becoming the voice of Join Digital. Welcome back, Matt.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me back, Anthony. It's been a pleasure, twice in one day to be here.
Well, I've had some very good feedback about you so far over the last few weeks. So, I'm hoping everyone's logged in and tuned in again today to listen to your dulcet tones. The title for this session today is To CDP or Not to CDP, 5 ways that you can unify disconnected customer data systems. Please, as ever, if you do have any questions for Matt during this live session, then you can type those into the questions box on the GoToWebinar technology, which is on screen and which we're running this with you today. We'll try and address as many as we can at the end. We generally seem to be able to get through about 2 questions. Very quickly then, I'm going to hand the reins over to Matt. Over to you, my friend.
Wonderful, thanks Anthony. So I think to start with then, I think we'll be having probably a lot of you are actually going to be wondering, what's Shakespeare got to do with marketing, really? And a lot of us are going to be familiar with the famous words of Hamlet. But like I said, what's this all got to do with marketing? Well, if we actually take these opening lines to Hamlet and translate them into modern English, add a slight sort of marketing twist to them as well, we're going to end up with something a little bit like this. To live or to die, that is the question. Whether it's nobler to suffer the terrible trials of siloed, inaccessible, disparate data, or to fight those trials off and find a solution to end them completely. So with that fight to resolve those data issues at the front of our minds, we're going to be taking a look at how to really avoid those trials and tribulations. And we're going to be looking at sort of 3 key areas. What is a CDP and how do we actually define what a CDP is? We're going to be looking at the 5 approaches that marketers adopt when they're trying to obtain that single customer view, including understanding the advantages and disadvantages of those different approaches, and then exploring some of the things to consider when businesses are looking to obtain that single customer view and that robust customer data foundation as well. So I think to start with then, and I'm sure quite a few of you on the webinar today are going to be sort of fluent with what a CDP is, but I thought this was something that was worth sort of picking up first. We're going to look at what is a CDP. And for this definition, I'm actually going to defer to David Rabb of the CDP Institute, who is pretty much responsible for what many consider to be the industry standard definition of a CDP. And there are 3 key elements that you can see on the screen here to Rabb's definition. The first of these being that a CDP is packaged software. It's a software product. It's not coded scripts and clever load routines, built by an IT team. It's, like I said, it's a product. It's designed to remove that heavy reliance that marketing have had on IT or on, database providers, marketing service providers for the building, the maintenance, and the actual containment and deployment of that database. And then when we look at the second point here, it's about creating these unified and persistent views of data. So by matching, merging, deduplicating the data across all those systems, the CDP is really breaking down those historical silos of data that are present within many businesses. And by making all of the data available and not having to summarize or aggregate that data at all, marketers are able to track customers and engage with them using that granular data as they move through their journey, and do so with complete historical persistence, removing all of those questions around data reliability, integrity, and traceability as well. And then the final point here is around accessibility. So by making data accessible to other systems, the CDP is not about locking you as a business into a particular vendor's walled garden of offerings. The whole idea of a CDP is that it enables you to choose the best data sources that you have in terms of your operational systems and the best channels in terms of best of breed execution channels for you to actually build up the MarTech stack that's most appropriate for your business. But finally then, the CDP is actually all about allowing business to become truly customer-centric by placing that trustworthy, shareable, reliable customer data at the heart of the organization and everything that's going on. But I think it's also worth saying at this point as well, beyond this core definition, there are 5 further points really that go on to make up the CDP Institute's sort of refinement of this definition that has come out, and is called the Real CDP certification. Now, those 5 additional points, as you see them on the screen here, are all equally as important as that core definition, as they help to really narrow the scope of what is and isn't a CDP. And it's all about helping to provide clarity to the marketplace while actually reinforcing elements of CDP capabilities that I've seen get lost in the sort of noise of a comparison and valuation between technologies. So to summarize these then, this is all about bringing all of your data together from all of the different online and offline sources, whether they're modern systems, whether they're legacy systems, doing so with all of that detail captured and maintained, being able to store that for as long as possible, obviously without breaching data privacy regulations. That's a really key thing, while being able to bring together these data points in a customer-centric rather than channel-specific view of each individual in the database. And like I said earlier, being able to share that with any system right across the organization as well. So I think then, what challenges are we trying to overcome with the use of a CDP? Well, the answer to this question really, as Anthony hinted at in the introduction, goes back to the sort of the dawn of database marketing. Marketers are trying to really achieve a single view of the customer. They want to understand who that customer is. They want to include all the contact points, all of the historical interactions. They want to be able to trace each customer's overall journey in order to be able to communicate with them and market to them far more effectively than if they were just sending out batch and blast marketing messages. And this has become really important, and ever more important as well, as we start to have channels, we have data sources, and the world becomes more and more hyper-connected, especially when we start to think about customers' attention spans and the fact that their willingness really to accept anything less than bespoke experiences, outstanding service. And these sort of ability to accept those experiences when they're not quite up to par dwindle to a point that it makes the job of marketers or anyone talking to a customer extremely difficult. And from a marketing context, it really makes that hard when businesses are stuck in that old sort of manual way of working, where there's heavy reliance on other departments or other external resources, such as a marketing agency or a database provider. So with that in mind then, marketers are not going to choose to suffer those terrible trials that I referenced at the beginning from Hamlet. They're actually going to look to find a solution to the problem. And then this is where sort of 5 key approaches that I've seen taken across the marketplace come in. And I think we want to spend a little bit of time going over these approaches and then taking a look at them in a little bit of detail and understanding, what are the pros and cons of using these different approaches to try and actually, construct that single customer view. So I think we'll start with option 1 then. If we take a quick look at an internal project, for example. So the general consensus here really is amongst every business I've ever spoken to that's ever tried to do this, they always come back to me with the resounding, just don't do it. Whatever you do, just don't do it. There are a number of reasons for this reaction, really, as far as I see it. But essentially, though, when you reduce it down and take out all of the business-specific issues, it really boils down to time, internal skills, project management, and cost. Like I said, in my experience, all of this seems to get sort of pushed to one side because the business is so focused on owning the customer data platform, owning the single customer view, that they've not sort of fully evaluated the impact of delivering a project, the scale and breadth of a CDP, using only the internal resource that they already have. Like I said, any project like this, it takes a lot of skill and it requires a lot of highly skilled developers. And normally the best way to do this is with developers that have done these kind of projects before. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, these people can be incredibly costly financially to a business as well. And if you are lucky to have one, maybe two of those people in-house, they're also going to have a day job as well. So it's that inevitable strain that has to be managed between day job and the deliverables that they have as part of this CDP project, which of those takes priority. That's always going to need an ongoing sense of management. I think the other thing I also see as well when we look at internal projects is around a lack of ROI. Scope creep as well. It's sort of two major things that you see regularly. And again, in my experience, this tends to be really when businesses set out a roadmap for deploying CDP or a single customer view, creating that in-house. But they're not always building that roadmap to sort of include ROI type checkpoints that are designed to demonstrate the actual value of the project as each stage or each phase is completed. Really, at this point, they start to struggle to showcase what they're actually delivering to the business, which can lead to a whole host of internal issues, as I'm sure you're aware. So if going down the route of an internal project, let's say, isn't necessarily right for you, then kind of brings up the question of what about contracting the work out to a third party, for example? For businesses where, like I say, doing it in-house just isn't an option, naturally looking to bring in experience from external sources is one way to go. This is where you can start to bring in the services of someone like a marketing services provider, or more commonly an agency, or even actually a specialist database provider as well. But one experience of these kind of projects is a real key driver for this type of approach. This can, as I've seen, actually be a very costly and complex way of obtaining that single customer view. And this really is actually down to the fact that these projects take a lot of time in terms of the management, and the commercial model of a lot of third-party providers can actually exacerbate cost issues, even if they remove this sort of skills gap that some businesses might have when you start to talk about project management, resourcing, and all of those other sort of little nuanced features that are required to deliver something internally. But then we can start to look at other ways that we can bring data together then. So, if volume and breadth of data is a real key issue for you as a business, then I've seen lots of organizations in this state where they'll actually say, well, hold on a minute, we're just going to build a data warehouse, or we're just going to build ourselves a data lake. And the big thing here is that I typically see businesses go down this route when they're looking to consolidate and manage all of their data from right across the business. It's all about filing it away in an organized central repository, almost like a data library. And the other thing here is I also see IT is typically leading this project. Sure that their data is trustworthy, complete, robust, and usable. So some of our audience that we have today are probably actually going to be sat here questioning, well, hold on a minute here, Matt. Why do I want to adopt a marketer-owned, self-serve, empowerment-based approach to data management if the expertise to build a single customer view doesn't already exist in-house? What am I letting myself in for here? It's a fair question. And I believe that marketers know their business's customer data better than pretty much anyone else in the organization. Many CDP vendors offer what would be considered a hybrid model of deployment, where marketers can do as much as they are able or they want to do, obviously in line with the timeframes they're working to, the skills that they have, etc. And the CDP vendor is able to provide as much or as little support for that deployment method as possible, meaning that for modern DIY marketing teams, the CDP is a great way to meet their needs, but have full vendor support and expertise on hand as and when it's needed. And they've got complete control of requesting and utilizing that resource as well. I mean, many CDPs have also, they've moved on from just providing the database as well. They've actually moved into providing analytical capabilities, and it's all about aiding marketers to be able to iteratively query data And then be able to coordinate the provision of the entire omni-channel journey as well, not just about, like I say, that data foundation. So in that case, then it's worth, with any CDP that you're looking at, sort of checking out what integrations are available and how feedback that you might have in terms of the systems you're using can affect the product roadmap for that CDP as well. Because saying this, it's all about, the CDP is all about actually being able to connect to absolutely any operational system or any execution channel you have. That connectivity is a core part of the CDP. Like I said, it's that capability that helps you leverage all of the existing technology investments that you've made, whilst being able to keep the marketplace open to you as the business evolves over time as well. And this is all about future-proofing, being able to allow you to meet those different needs over time. So, as we've already covered then, the process of actually unifying your data is fraught with some potential pitfalls that's worth thinking about. But there are 5 sort of common things that I tend to talk to every business about when they're looking at customer data platform and single customer view projects. And those things really are data, people, culture, technology, and process. So when we talk about a few things, there's just a couple of key things to consider here. So when we talk about data, it's what data do you have? Where is it? What systems is it in? What departments have access to these systems? How do you access that data? Do you have to log in through a user interface, or do you request a data extract, for example? And then when you think about people, it's what skills do you have in marketing? What skills does the business have in its broad team as well? And then what are the skills gaps to consider? And from a culture perspective, this is really kind of the key thing. Is the business going to benefit from implementing a CDP? Are they going to benefit from making that pivot to customer centricity? And then when we think about technology, it's fairly similar to people as well. It's what have you already got in place? What are you using in marketing? What are your teams using across the organization as well? And then when we think about processes, this is where we start to look at things that will be fixed or changed by the unification approach that you are actually choosing. What is the actual efficiency, benefit, and ROI of making that change? So with each of these sort of 5 key areas to consider, it's worth understanding where you are currently and what your vision is and where you want to get to, and then being able to map out the steps, as I've done here in this marketing transformation map. I mean, the time intervals we have along the top are, they're just indicative at this stage. But the important thing to remember is it's going to be a process to get to where you want to get to. It's going to be a phased attainment of that vision. It's not going to be, snap your fingers and it's going to happen, or it's going to be one quick thing and it's going to be resolved. It is going to take some time to do, but it's about proving the ROI, as I said earlier on, in each of those individual steps. So I'm sure a number of you are actually asking this question as well. Hold on a second. Don't we already have a single customer view, right? We've had it for years. It's in our CRM. But I think I want to just pause here and actually refer you back to the definition of the CDP that we spoke about earlier. And I just ask you to consider a couple of things. Are you still reliant on IT or other technical resource, whether that's internal or external, to get access to the data, to query the data? You're working within a software platform, or is there a technology barrier? Do you have to learn to write SQL code to be able to get at the data? Is all the data actually available to you? Can you be sure that it's trustworthy? There are no silos that you've got to get around. You're able to log into multiple systems. You're not dealing with levels of aggregation or summarization. Can you actually reliably share that data across the business and in its systems as well, without having to rely on lots of manual process? And are you free to actually use the execution channels and other business-specific systems of your choice? Or are you locked into only using one vendor's tool set, whether that's from them or different partners? What choice do you have in that space as well? But I think most importantly, though, does your current solution meet your needs as a marketer? And I think the reason I say this is I've seen quite a lot of research into this, and Gartner, some statistics that they've put out have really jumped out at me. So there are 52% of marketing leaders saying that they've got a full CDP deployment. But then you follow this up with the same group of people surveyed, 51% of those leaders said that their CRM is actually their CDP. So you can start to see how this kind of overlap and this potential confusion isn't really sort of helping understand, the ability to provide that unified data foundation, and just adds to that sort of confusion we spoke about earlier on as well. So suppose that we get to the point where we're talking about making a decision. What do you want to do? What's the best way to actually go about this for your business? And it's beyond me to sort of tell you the answer. It's a business specific question that only yourself and your organization can answer. But there is a little bit of insight that I'd like to share here as well. So with the focus on the level of customer service and the quality of customer experience, businesses need to really evaluate the balance between a short-term solution to a data problem and a longer-term project that helps sort of lay some stable, trustworthy data foundations as business evolves and grows over time. And with data being such a hot topic, and it's so regularly scrutinized now from a business perspective, but also from a legislative perspective as well, when we start to think about things like GDPR, CCPA, for example. I think it's really down to us as marketers to really show what's possible when we take data, we manage it properly, and we actually use that for the benefit of the customer. But really, though, this all condenses down to a couple of key points. What's the available budget and what skills do you have within the business? And I think this one's especially relevant if you're actually looking at building and managing your own CDP. What are the time constraints for actually solving the data unification problem? Do you have time to do it yourselves? Do you have other more pressing things to do in your day jobs, for example? But also, what's the implication of not doing anything at all? This is something that a lot of organizations forget. How would something like a regulatory fine under GDPR or under CCPA actually affect the business? And what's the knock-on effect to the customer of that fine in terms of experience and in terms of your ability to meet their needs? So I know we've covered quite a lot today as the sort of final session that joined for this week. But I think that everyone here is going to be approaching this webinar from a broad range of backgrounds and experiences with customer data in multiple different businesses. So in summary then, there are many tools available to manipulate and store customer data. Each has its own benefits, each has its own limitations. All of this condenses down to really looking at those tools and looking at those approaches, balancing that with what you're trying to achieve as a business, and using that to inform which is the most appropriate tool or approach for you to meet the outcomes that you're seeking. But if that outcome really is around utilizing a unified, trustworthy customer profile, if you and your organization are looking to become customer-centric, you're looking to leverage a truly unified single customer view, then I would have said that the best option of the ones that we've looked at today is going to be to look at a CDP, because while there are a lot of systems out there that provide some of the capabilities of a CDP, they're not all designed to meet the needs of marketers, especially marketers who are really looking to employ that robust data foundation and leverage that as part of the overall marketing experience. So Anthony, I see we've had quite a few questions come in. Did we want to take some time to take a look at a couple of those for the remainder of the session?
Hi Matt, surprise, it's Jen.
Oh, hey Jen, how are you?
So, hi everyone, my name's Jen, I'm also on the marketing team. I'm actually the backup presenter in case we had internet issues. And last session of the day, obviously Anthony's internet got a bit tired, so it logged him out. So I'm here as backup. And I have been watching Matt. We've had some questions through. So we're going to quickly whiz through those, and then I will just give a quick summary for episode 3 of Join Digital. So Matt, I'm going to dive into the first one.
Go for it.
You mentioned a customer-centric and not channel-specific view of a customer earlier in the presentation. Can you clarify what you mean, please?
So that's a really good question, I think. So firstly, thinking about this, what I'm talking about here is it's about the presence of a persistent unique identifier or a global unique identifier within the CDP. And we're talking about not relying on a channel-specific identifier, let's say an email address, as the one thing that all the data is centralized around. Because everything we know about a customer is going to change over time. First name can change, last name can change, gender can change, where you live, where you work, interests, preferences, different ways of contacting you. And if we rely on one of those individual contact points, if that changes and you unsubscribe, the business loses all of the memories attached to you as a person, because you are actually resolving down to just being an email address or a website tag ID or a device ID, for example, rather than being able to keep all of that information in one place. So again, this is all about tracking change and future-proofing that data foundation for an organization to use both now and moving forward as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Matt. And thank you for sending that question through to us. Okay, so the next one that popped up was, our team have already done some work on bringing data sources together in our current systems. Would this work be totally wasted if we chose to look at buying a CDP rather than building our own solution?
That's another great question, actually, Jen. I mean, it's something that I've actually come across a couple of times, and I think the short answer to that is absolutely not. Yeah, depending upon the learnings that the business in question has had, the processes they've used, a lot of that work can actually be used to speed up the deployment of a CDP. I mean, when we're talking about things, if you've already looked at your sort of two sources within a business and you've understood how to pull the data together and combine that data and unify that data from two sources, that can be fed into the matching rules used within the CDP, for example. It can also be useful when you're starting to look at the different ROI checkpoints. What are the key things? If you were to put 5 key things you have to hit to prove value to the business, it just speeds up what that looks like in terms of the onboarding stage here as well. So the list really sort of does go on, and it's quite dependent upon the work that's been done in the systems that the particular business have worked with. But no, absolutely, it's not a waste of time at all.
Okay, thanks very much, Matt. So that brings us to the end of the Q&A session, section of that session. Thank you very much for joining us for episode 3. We hope to see you again next week for episode 4. We've just got a couple of things to mention before we log off for today. So if you want to catch up on any of the sessions that we have run every Wednesday for the last 3 weeks, then you can do so. We have all the sessions on demand. All you need to do is head to bluevend.com/join recordings, and you can catch up on all the great content there. Obviously, next week we're going to be back again for episode 4. So we have 4 brand new sessions again. We're actually bringing in several of our partners, which is going to be fantastic. So you're going to be hearing from Fresh Relevance, Alant Group, and Dot Digital. So we've got a great setup for next week as well. And then the last thing is that if you want to have a look at any of the synopsis for all those sessions and register for episode 4, then you do need to head to bluevend.com/join, and you can register there. And like this week, you'll get all of your email reminders and any updates from us. So please head over there now to sign up for episode 4, and we'll also send out a reminder email to give you a heads up. Okay, well, thank you very, very much for joining us again today. We really had another fantastic day of Join. We're really enjoying doing all of these webinars each week. It's really making us really connect with all of our partners and the Blue Ven family. It's just really lovely. So hopefully you'll join us again for next week, and goodbye.